Ladies and gentlemen, mesdames et messieurs, je pense que c'est la 9e fois que j'attends un forum d'accessibilité ou la colloque INSERM, mais encore une fois, je pense que c'est la 9e fois que je dois excuser moi de ne pas d'être capable de parler français. Excuse-moi. Et peut-être c'est une raison, ce sont les excellents services de traduire. Merci bien, les gens en dehors. So let me switch. Oh, thank you. I'm not finished. I switch to English. Ladies and gentlemen, when Dominique and his team asked me to talk about education, I thought, wow, this is a huge area, and I thought how to bring it down to something which I can handle in a short speech, and which is, or how to say, which brings over a message where we could find an anchor to go on and to push the issue forward. And I remembered at that time a sentence which was spoken by one of my professors when I went to secondary school, and it was, it was religion. And we were talking about why is the church so fond and why of being part of the curriculum, being part of church and being part of education. And he said, what is important in society, in our world, is in the curriculum. The church would be in danger of being marginalized, of being no longer of importance when it is not taught, when it's not part of education from the early ages on over time. And I asked myself, isn't this the same for accessibility, for eAccessibility? If we don't manage to bring eAccessibility into the curricula, that we bring it into the deep mindset of all the population, that they consider accessibility and openness of the society for all people, for people with disabilities included, all our activities also might be marginalized and step by step put aside because everybody thinks there is something more important or something different of more importance. My background was already said. Jan introduced me. I work at the University of Linz. I'm a computer scientist, and therefore I'm very much interested in all the issues about e-accessibility, and I'm heading a service center for students with disabilities for more than 20 years, I think 22 years now, and we had a lot of cooperation with publishers. We did a lot of getting better access to the materials, and we had a lot of failures, we had a lot of problems, and we still have them. And a third reason why I think, or why that Dominique invited me, I am I'm coordinating a European-wide network which is called eAccess Plus, which focuses on mainstreaming e-accessibility, fostering the take-up of e-accessibility in practice, and in this domain, of course, education plays an important role. So we have a small focus there, which also wants to strengthen the education in e-accessibility in our society. The core question is, why is it so difficult to bring e-accessibility into mainstream, the uptake, and why is it so difficult to bring it into education? There are a lot of reasons, core reasons, which all in the room most probably know. It's the individual benefit of accessibility. People with disabilities, but also anybody, benefits from well-accessible, well-structured information in our society. We all share the knowledge that the demographic development in our society leads to a situation that it's not only a marginalized small group of individual groups of people with disabilities. We are talking, according to statistics, of 15% to 20% of the population having a need to getting accessible information and an accessible information society. Politics reacted to that. These issues were mentioned. I-2010, Horizon 2020, Mandate 376, the UN Convention, accessibility, AT, Design for all of them are mentioned in these political directives. We have legislation around the countries, anti-discrimination legislation. We have the technical solutions. thanks to the World Wide Web Consortium, thanks to a lot of standardization activities, thanks to tool developers, thanks to industry, we have the technical means at hand, and this was presented before by Luc and Gabriel. These are wonderful tools which we have already in hand. This is not secret science or whatever. We can do it. We have it in our hand. There are business benefits. Of course, we might need more examples of business benefit of accessibility. This would be a considerable help, but basically we have the reasons and we try to transfer them. And there is also a social economic reason for accessibility. But in the end, we always face a situation that e-accessibility gets a lot of problems and really be taken up. We made a lot of efforts in education. We heard several examples. Here on this slide there are a lot of pictures, a lot of logos of activities we did at our university, from university courses over international programs in e-accessibility, in assistive technology, in ongoing course offers, cooperation with the Austrian Computer Society and other players, courses, for example, like IT for Blind, to certify, to train trainers who work with blind and visually handicapped people, towards courses integrating education into mainstream curricula at university. There is one good news I can give you. At our university from next semester on, accessibility, software and web accessibility will be compulsory. So I'm really happy. Every student has passed by myself. If he's not good in accessibility, he will fail. So that's the good news. The bad news, all the courses, all the activities we did over the year, they meet with very, very low interest. This happens all the time, and I think we share all the same experience. What is really the impact of our activities? And perhaps first, when we analyze the impact of our activities, let's look into our own sector. I did a small study when preparing for this presentation about web pages of organizations for people with disabilities, rehabilitation and care centers, specialized hospitals. And I had a look at their web pages, and it's disastrous. Our own sector does not really take accessibility into account. They have a lot of excuses. The most wonderful one I got was, oh, our webpage is not intended to be read by our clients. So this is really, I mean, we still get such feedback. Another question we put, what about job profiles? When you are hiring staff, is e-accessibility or knowledge in accessibility, in mainstreaming accessibility, an issue? Do you ask for the know-how, for the qualification, for a professional background? The feedback was, none of them. They said, yes, of course, we are interested, but actually we did not announce for it. We didn't know that such a profession is out there or whatever. A third question was, when you are contracting web designers, software developers, when you need software, when you need IT in procurement, is e-accessibility an issue? Also the feedback was, not really. I mean, it might well be that Austria is a country behind the mountains. The situation might be different in other countries, but I'm a bit afraid that we find that we meet with a similar situation in a lot of countries. And then we ask mainstream to accept or to take into account e-accessibility. Of course we could, but the first step is we have even to work in our sector, in our organizations, which are dedicated to support, to serve the needs of people with disabilities, to really seriously take up e-accessibility as an issue in practice, in education, in selecting staff, and of course in changing our inner organizations that they really are oriented towards accessibility and e-accessibility. We agree, the good news, accessibility in mainstream is getting better. Gradually, more web pages get accessible, ATMs get accessible, built environment gets more accessible. That's basically a good news, but there is also a bad news. The internet is exploding. The growth of the internet, the implementation of IT in our society is growing much faster. And I remember a saying of the president of the World Blind Union, I think it was 3 years ago, and he said, everybody says accessibility becomes better, but actually it gets worse and worse, because in the growth of IT in general, we are getting further and further behind in implementing accessibility in practice. Let me quote a saying by two famous philosophers, Thomas Kuhn and Karl Popper. They said, if we want to change a paradigm, a deep mindset in our society, let me quote, you can't convince the protectors of the old paradigm with better arguments. You have to wait till they retire and more open-minded follow. Do we have to wait? I hope we don't have to wait, because otherwise a lost generation is always a thing we would like to have. How can we change the situation now, or at least impact already in the next year that the situation changes? This is really a big issue, and as I said at the beginning, what could we do? And my focus is, why shouldn't we have a deeper look into the curricula? And what I quoted at the beginning, what is important is in the curricula. Let me give a short feedback, a short understanding why I think work on curricula and impacting on curricula is really of importance. Let me use therefore some words which you find. The first one is, of course, curriculum. Curriculum, a nice Latin word, means what a student has to run to. It lists the subjects, it selects the subjects which have to be taught, which have to be learned, and this builds up a basic understanding. The question would be, is e-accessibility in the different curricula, and I don't talk about only university, I would even go further back in primary education or even back in kindergarten, not about accessibility, complex technical issues, but about a basic understanding, this changed understanding of disability in our society. Is this part, such an understanding, is this part of our education, of our curricula? The second argument why we should have a look at curricula, we could interpret curriculum or curere, all are rushing together and try to influence curricula. I was really astonished when I was talking to people at our university and asking them over 20 years, please bring accessibility into the mainstream curriculum of computer science. How many people are influencing curricula? How many people, and including the church, they have a voice in Austria regarding the curriculum in computer science. All these pressure groups, lobbying groups in society, they try to influence the curricula. Why? And I summarize with the title, with the sentence which I got in my school education, because what is in the curriculum gets importance, gets presence, gets understanding, and influences the mindset. And again, the question, what about accessibility? What about e-accessibility? Do we find accessibility represented in the curricula, in the building up of the mindset, of the deep understanding what our world is, what our society is, what is important in our society? Do we find this also in the curricula? The next word we could use, and we could use a lot of words, the syllabus, which is the composition of the content, the matrix, how we measure what we have to learn, defined order, prescriptive knowledge, methods, didactics. Is accessibility, is this part of all of this? Again, the question, do we know, is it part of it? And if so, how can we influence it? If it's not, how can we bring it into these curricula, into this syllabi? So this is the official, how to say, naming and listing of all the items which should be in the curriculum. But we all know, and I think all of you at some point in your education, you learned about a hidden curriculum. The hidden curriculum is a term used to describe the unwritten social rules and expectations of behavior that we all seem to know, but we are never were taught about them. This is about, how to say, with these predefined subjects, with these approaches to education and pedagogics, We learn the attitudes. We get the mindset, as said. We learn a selective awareness building, selecting, as I said before, what is important in society. We learn an assignment of roles, what a certain group of people in society has to do, what their role is. We learn, or we do with this, and the intent, and also that's why people and the pressure groups are working so hard on this. They serve, the hidden curriculum helps for a social, stable reproduction of our society, to keep things as they are. And again, the question, is eAccessibility reflected? Is accessibility reflected? Is the situation of people with disabilities reflected in all this? And of course, then the actual day-to-day practice of pedagogics to form the formation of people, which includes, of course, an individual emancipation development. And everybody, when you ask somebody in society, agrees people with disabilities should have the same possibility to develop themselves, to have the same chances in society. But on the other side, in the background, they always work on a certain conformation, that they conform to a situation which is established, which is stable over the years. There is a contradiction, of course, which you for sure heard out of this. On the one side, it's about emancipation, about giving people the opportunity to develop themselves in a society. On the other side, the curriculum, school, education, they ask for confirmation. And this is the reason why curricula are a battlefield of influences where people try to influence the mindset in society at the moment, and also for the next generations to transfer a certain social and a social system and a society. And of course, we can also discuss in this context the hidden curriculum of disability. We know, of course, in our sector, the development of a medical model of disability over an environmental model of disability towards a social constructivist model, which is different and which outlines that it's not disability as an individual phenomenon only, it's up everybody, a designer, a developer, a worker in society, by designing, by structuring our environment, they also build up disabilities. It's not only an individual phenomenon. Disability is a phenomenon which is brought forward by society. But the question, is this changing understanding, which we share here in our room, has this arrived in mainstream? Has this arrived as a general understanding in society? Let me use one example of a school book, or not, sorry, of a university book of educating ophthalmologists, oh sorry, my English, doctors for eye diseases. And this is a book which is still actually used in our country for educating doctors. And let me read to you what I found there about people with disabilities, vision impaired people. Visually impaired people have much more job opportunities than blind people. No evidence for that. Besides the central vision sharpness, also intelligence, personal skills, social origin, educational background, and local school opportunities play an important role. And now, it is important that such children, before being left behind due to their reduced vision, that they are taken out of the normal school and are included into special schools for visually impaired. Magnifying classes and so on, they go to other sections. This is not history, this is still material which is in use for education of professionals which are working with people with disabilities. And this brings me back to this mindset. If people learn such a mindset, if they get this into their mind and work on such a basis, how can we expect that they really change structures, infrastructures towards accessibility, if education is oriented in this way? Another more modern example, which I got to know only yesterday. We all know that the UN Convention is out there, a partner of us called Zero Project. They are doing an annual study about the impact, about change of accessibility in our society. And they analyzed in 55 different countries how many of them, and all of them signed the UN Convention. Only 34 of them provide audio version of the UN Convention, sign language translation, plain language version. So even they sign such a basic document, the impact really to take this serious and bring the information to accessibility level seems not to be there. There is still a mind change, a deep mind change necessary to understand that this means immediate practice and reaction from scratch and to change the approach towards information provision, towards accessibility. We need impact at both levels. At the official level of the curriculum, the know-how, accessibility, I'm quite sure we share this in all countries, is not there. We have to bring accessibility, e-accessibility into the curriculum, into the agenda of education. And of course, we should reflect in this stone set mindsets, this influenced, lobbied curriculum, also in this field of the hidden curriculum, which is in the back of our mind. We have to influence that we really can make a sustainable change in our society. First, we will recognize the fear of people, in particular of our own sector, because they might be afraid that they have to change, they might lose their benefits or whatever. If we are lucky, it's only the fear. It might also be, and it will be, also opposition. People in the background might officially say, yes, we have to take up accessibility, but in the background they are lobbying, they are working for established structures and will not change them. It might be dangerous. I have a photo here from Giordano Bruno. Perhaps people know him. He was executed in the year 1600. He was educating people about the heliocentric system. It was a different person, Galileo and Copernicus, who brought it forward, but they did not educate it. The person who educated people about the heliocentric system, he was killed. It took the church 400 years to excuse. In the year 2000, the church excused and said it was a mistake, and I do hope that we don't need 400 years to change the situation of e-accessibility. We have to manage that we, in our own sector and mainstream, that we start to question our day-to-day practice, that we adapt our structures, the work we are doing on day-to-day, that we suspend, that we accept the challenge, that we build up and we cooperate building up an inclusive and accessible society, and that we take away the fear of this changing of our society. Education, of course, is a key part of that. And it's a unique window, and therefore I'm not going with Popper and Kuhn that we have to wait for the next generation. We are in the process of the ICT revolution. The society is transforming in the information society. We have a situation of devaluation of traditional roles and institutions, devaluation of traditional education. Everything seems to be fluent at the moment, and this gives us a unique opportunity, a unique window to bring e-inclusion into these developments, and of course I think we should bring it also in the curricula. My proposal would be to start something like a curriculum initiative that should support a fundamental change in awareness, understanding and mindset of disability and accessibility, both in the official and the hidden curriculum, and in particular to support the basic underlying meaning of the UN Convention. We should consider what curricula should respect e-accessibility. We should do research how our curricula should respect e-accessibility. We should have a research, we should find out what is the awareness, what is the basic understanding of disability and accessibility in the different curricula, but also in media. How do people in mainstream talk about disability and accessibility? In materials, in books, in television. We should understand how to say, what do other people think? about what we think this is quite obvious for us in the room, but it's not the same for the people outside there. We should consider also what curricula first influencing with eAccessibility, specialist curricula, our own curricula in our domain for care workers, for support staff, for special educators, but also further on computer science, design and content provision, architecture, because information technology goes out into the environment, teachers' education, management, administration, their curricula, their education should respect accessibility. And it's not only, as it was said, at university level, starting from kindergarten over primary school, secondary school, university level, job education, but also lifelong learning. We have to have a look, is accessibility properly respected and taken into account? Curriculum target groups are, of course, a lot of people. Our own sector first. I never forget to mention it's first our own sector who has to respect accessibility and has to be a model sector. Designers, engineers, authors, policy administration, again, management. Everybody is more or less the target group for this activity when we want to make accessibility sustainable and a basic human right in our society. Then we could discuss for a long time about how should curricula respect accessibility, what could be the modules, and we had examples in this discussion about, I finished soon. We had discussion about curricula for publishers and so on. It's always different. It depends on the situation. It should include awareness, policy, legislation, disability, how people work with assistive technologies, guidelines and recommendations. We know the WCAG guidelines, the set of guidelines, the standards which are there. It should include techniques, tools and examples which were presented today already. Accessibility, the engineering process. At what point in the process of developing, providing information or tools should accessibility be taken into account most efficiently? Design and usability, again in the process of design and usability engineering, where should accessibility be placed and be taken into account? And managing practice, how to make accessibility an issue of everyday practice. We need a modular approach to such a curriculum that different domains can take up modules and bring it into their education, into their curricula. And this might bring us from the situation we have now. We try to push, we run behind people and push accessibility. Perhaps then there is a change that people demand for tools, templates, patterns, examples of accessibility, and we can supply the know-how which is here in the room, that we bring it out because there is a demand for it. With this, let me finish. What is important is in the curriculum, and therefore eAccessibility has to go into the curriculum. And therefore, come and get involved. It's an invitation. There is no guarantee that this helps and really pushes the issue forward, but if we don't try it, we will not experience it. Come and get involved, and thank you very much for your attention.